The chamber of the Galactic Confederacy Council glowed with the soft blue light that the majority of member species found most conducive to diplomatic discourse. Ambassador Elena Petrova of Earth sat silently at the crescent-shaped table designated for newer members, watching as her proposal, the third such submission in as many months, was systematically dismantled by Minister Kalen of Cygnus. While we appreciate Earth's continued enthusiasm for the Lifeline network, Kalen said, his translucent digits gesturing elegantly through a holographic display, the Council finds these proposed security enhancements to be unnecessarily complex and, frankly, beyond the scope of Earth's administrative purview. Petrova maintained the diplomatic smile she had perfected over 7 years of representing humanity in these chambers. She had expected this response. Earth's proposals were always met with the same patronizing dismissal. The Cygnans, with their crystalline physiology and technological prowess, had never bothered to hide their conviction that humans were useful primarily as technicians and maintenance workers. Council President Borith, a Vrel whose segmented exoskeleton gleamed under the chamber lights, nodded in agreement. The current security protocols have served the Confederacy adequately for 3 centuries. The Lifeline's infrastructure remains the backbone of our galactic community, and while Earth's contributions to its maintenance are valued, the core administrative functions must remain under centralized control. Of course, Petrova replied, her voice measured. Earth simply wishes to note that the documented transmission anomalies in the Orion sector suggest vulnerabilities that could be exploited. Our engineers have developed solutions that could be implemented with minimal disruption. Noted, Borith said, his voice flat with finality. The Council will review Earth's findings as resources permit. Now, regarding the Proxima Colonial Expansion Initiative, Petrova felt her communication device vibrate silently in her pocket. A priority message from Earth Intelligence Director Anya Sharma. 3 short pulses, their agreed signal for urgent, eyes-only information. She excused herself with practiced subtlety and made her way to the secure communication chamber reserved for Earth's delegation. Director Sharma's holographic image materialized, her normally composed features tense with controlled urgency. Elena, we've confirmed it. Project containment is real. Petrova's blood ran cold. For months, intelligence had been gathering fragments of information about a classified Confederacy initiative. Rumors, intercepted partial communications, unusual resource allocations. Nothing conclusive until now. How certain are we? Petrova asked. Absolute certainty, Sharma replied, her voice low despite the secure channel. Our deep cover asset in the Cygnan Ministry of Technology extracted the complete documentation. Multi-phase implementation over a 15-year period. They're planning to systematically remove Earth from all critical lifeline systems once they've reverse-engineered our core innovations. Sharma transmitted a series of documents that appeared in Petrova's secure display. The ambassador scanned the material, her diplomatic mask falling away as the implications became clear. Project Containment was comprehensive, a meticulously planned initiative to extract Earth's technological contributions while gradually removing Earth's influence and access. Phase 1 involved covert duplication of Earth's proprietary lifeline systems. Phase 2 outlined the systematic replacement of human personnel in key positions. The final phases detailed the eventual relegation of Earth to a resource contributor status with severely restricted access to advanced technologies and interstellar travel. They never intended U.S. to be equal partners, Petrova whispered. No, Sharma agreed. We were always meant to be the scaffolding, to be removed once the structure was complete. Have you briefed the Unified Command? General Thorne has been informed. He's awaiting your confirmation before proceeding with contingency planning. Petrova stared at the damning evidence. Years of diplomatic efforts, technological sharing, and supposed partnership, all while the Confederacy plotted to contain and ultimately marginalize humanity. The realization crystallized something that had been forming in her mind for years. The gilded cage had been there all along. Earth had simply been too eager to join the galactic community to recognize the bars. "Inform the general that I confirm the intelligence," Petrova said finally. "Tell him to initiate severance protocol assessment." Sharma's eyes widened slightly, the only indication of surprise from the disciplined intelligence director. "You understand what that could mean?" "I do," Petrova replied. "But so should they have." 3 days later, Ambassador Petrova stood before the full Galactic Confederacy Council. The chamber was filled to capacity. Representatives from all 217 member species present physically or via quantum projection. It was unprecedented for an ambassador to request an emergency, full council session, but Petrova had leveraged every diplomatic tool at her disposal to secure this moment. She stepped to the central podium, the chamber falling silent as sensing arrays focused on her solitary human figure. "Esteemed council members," she began, her voice clear and carrying none of the turbulent emotion she felt. "I come before you today with a brief but significant announcement. As of 0600 Universal Standard Time, Earth has formally withdrawn from the Galactic Confederacy, effective immediately." A moment of stunned silence followed, broken by eruptions of confused murmurs and exclamations. President Borith raised a limb for silence. "Ambassador Petrova," he said, his voice tinged with irritation and disbelief, "this is highly irregular. There are established protocols for membership reconsideration. A unilateral withdrawal is unprecedented and, frankly, raises questions about the stability of Earth's governance." Kalen of Cygnus leaned forward, his crystalline features refracting light as he moved. "If this is some form of negotiating tactic regarding your recent proposals, I must inform you it is both inappropriate and ineffective." Petrova smiled thinly. "This is neither a negotiation nor a request. It is a notification. Earth has withdrawn due to irreconcilable strategic differences. All Earth personnel are being recalled from Confederacy installations effective immediately. All communications channels between Earth and Confederacy entities will be closed following this session. I thank you for your attention." Before the eruption of voices could fully manifest, Petrova turned and walked from the chamber, leaving behind a council in disarray. Confused, annoyed, but not yet afraid. That would come later. Across the galaxy, in thousands of locations simultaneously, human personnel received encrypted recall orders. On space stations, planetary outposts, research facilities, and aboard vessels, Earth citizens quietly disengaged from their duties and made their way to prearranged extraction points. The exodus was orderly, methodical, and almost entirely unnoticed in its initial stages, precisely as planned. In the subterranean command center beneath the Himalayan mountains on Earth, General Marcus Thorne stood before a vast holographic display of the Galactic Lifeline Network. Thousands of interconnected nodes pulsed with light, transport hubs, energy distribution centers, data repositories, and communication relays that spanned nearly a third of the Milky Way. Humans had designed, built, and maintained this network for decades. The Confederacy had provided the interstellar transportation technology that made it possible, but the intricate systems architecture that kept the galaxy's commerce, communication, and energy distribution functioning smoothly was predominantly Earth's contribution. It was the reason humanity had been admitted to the Confederacy despite their relative technological immaturity in other areas. Status of personnel evacuation? Thorne asked, his weathered face illuminated by the blue glow of the display. 97% complete, sir, a young officer replied. Remaining 3% are in transit from deep space assignments. Estimated completion in 6 hours. Thorne nodded. In severance protocol preparation? Director Sharma stepped forward from the shadows at the back of the command center. All systems are in position, General. Dormant logic bombs placed over the past decade have been verified and await activation commands. Module disengagement sequences have been prepared and distributed to all team leaders. Confederacy response? Confusion, primarily, Sharma replied. They appear to believe this is either an internal political maneuver or an elaborate negotiating tactic. Their intelligence services are attempting to establish contact with alternate Earth authorities, not yet comprehending that this is a unified planetary decision. Thorne turned to examine the secondary displays showing the status of Earth's defensive systems. The planetary shield grid, a technology the Confederacy believed was still theoretical, glowed green with readiness. "Begin Phase 1 of Severance Protocol," Thorne ordered. Across the command center, senior operators initiated carefully orchestrated command sequences. On the main display, hundreds of nodes in the Lifeline network flickered briefly as Earth design control modules began a subtle but systematic disengagement from the main network architecture. There was no dramatic shutdown, no obvious sabotage. Instead, authentication protocols began to fail in seemingly random patterns. Access permissions corrupted. Handshake sequences between Earth-designed systems and Confederacy oversight mechanisms degraded imperceptibly. It was the technological equivalent of carefully untying threads from a complex tapestry, each strand removed with such precision that the overall pattern appeared intact, even as its structural integrity weakened. In the Signan Central Technology Ministry, senior engineers were beginning to notice anomalies. Authentication failures, routing inconsistencies, minor power fluctuations in previously stable sectors. Another Earth system rejecting credential verification, a technician reported to Chief Engineer Nyleth. That's the 17th instance in the past hour. Nyleth's crystalline form shimmered with irritation. Run a diagnostic on the Central Authentication Registry. These must be cascade errors from their disorderly withdrawal process. I've already attempted 3 different diagnostic approaches, the technician replied. The systems report normal function, but the authentication continues to fail specifically for Confederacy oversight modules. Implement the emergency access protocols, Nyleth ordered. Bypass the standard authentication channels. The technician entered a series of commands, then frowned. Emergency protocols are being recognized, but the systems are reporting protocol fragmentation. I've never seen this error message before. Nyleth moved to the console, his crystalline digits flying across the interface. This is absurd. These are our systems. Technically, Minister, a junior engineer interjected cautiously. The authentication architecture was primarily designed by Earth. We provided the specifications, but they built the implementation frameworks. Nyleth dismissed the comment with an irritated gesture. A minor distinction. Execute a full system reset on the affected nodes. That would disrupt commerce in 3 sectors for at least 6 hours, the technician warned. Do it anyway. We need to regain control and realign these systems properly. As the reset commands were issued, no one in the Signan facility noticed the subtle data packets that propagated outward from the affected nodes just before they went offline, packets that would activate dormant code sequences embedded in adjacent systems when the reset was complete. The first major failure occurred 3 days later at the Proxima Trade Nexus, a massive space station that served as the commercial hub for 27 star systems. As a fleet of cargo vessels approached the automated docking system, the guidance algorithms suddenly recalculated their approach vectors with subtly incorrect parameters. 7 ships collided, their hulls crumpling against each other in a cascade of destruction that disabled a third of the station's docking capacity. Simultaneously, environmental control systems in the station's primary storage facilities began to malfunction. Moisture levels increased in some compartments, while temperatures fluctuated wildly in others. Billions in perishable goods were ruined in hours. At the Vega Scientific Repository, researchers arrived to discover that the quantum storage arrays containing decades of irreplaceable research data had suffered what the systems diagnosed as addressing table corruption. The data wasn't deleted. It was still physically present on the storage media, but the indexing systems that made it accessible and coherent had been scrambled beyond recovery. Along major shipping routes, vessels found themselves inexplicably rerouted, arriving at incorrect destinations or held in stasis at jump points due to navigation anomalies. Critical resource shipments failed to reach core worlds, while other planets received excessive quantities of unrequested supplies. Each failure appeared isolated and inexplicable. Software glitches, hardware degradation, operator error. But as the incidents multiplied and patterns emerged, the Confederacy leadership began to comprehend the magnitude of what was happening. An emergency session of the Galactic Confederacy High Council convened 7 days after Earth's withdrawal. The mood was no longer one of irritation or dismissal, but of growing alarm. The disruptions are accelerating, Council President Borth reported, his segmented limbs moving agitatedly. 37 major systems failures in the past 24 hours alone. Our engineers cannot isolate the causes or implement effective countermeasures. Minister Kalen's crystalline form had lost some of its luster, a sign of extreme stress in Sigmund physiology. This cannot be coincidence. The timing and nature of these failures strongly suggest a correlation with Earth's withdrawal and the removal of their personnel. Are you suggesting deliberate sabotage? Asked the representative from Tau Ceti, a gas-based entity contained within a hovering metallic sphere. I am suggesting, Kalen replied carefully, that Earth may have implemented some form of insurance policy within the systems they helped design. We re-established contact with Earth authorities? Borth demanded. All attempts at communication have failed, reported the Confederacy's chief diplomat. Our vessels cannot approach the Sol system due to some form of advanced shielding technology we were unaware they possessed. All transmissions go unanswered. Earth has effectively vanished from our sensors. This is outrageous, exclaimed the Rigelian delegate. We welcomed them into the Confederacy. We shared our knowledge, our resources, while apparently planning to eventually contain and restrict them, interrupted Kalen, flashing a data projection of the now exposed project containment documents. It seems our long-term strategy for Earth was discovered. A heavy silence fell over the chamber as the implications sank in. Regardless of that unfortunate planning document, Borth finally said, their response is disproportionate and threatens the stability of the entire Confederacy. We must regain control of the lifeline systems. Our best technical experts are working on it, Kalen responded. But we're discovering that the network architecture is far more complex than our documentation indicated. There appear to be hidden dependencies and security layers that were never documented in the official specifications. How is that possible? Demanded the Rigelian. All technology deployed in Confederacy infrastructure must be fully documented and transparent. In theory, yes, Kalen admitted. In practice, it seems Earth built in complexities and safeguards that went unnoticed or unreported. We are essentially trying to reverse engineer systems that evolved over decades under their management. The discussion continued for hours as reports of new failures streamed in. Commercial transport was becoming unreliable. Energy distribution to outlying systems was growing erratic. Communication delays were increasing exponentially across certain sectors. No one in the council chamber knew that every word of their emergency session was being monitored in the Himalayan Command Center on Earth. They still don't understand the full scope, Sharma observed, watching the live feed alongside General Thorne and Ambassador Petrova. They believe these are isolated incidents, Thorne agreed. They haven't yet grasped that the entire system is compromised. Petrova watched the council members argue with a complex mixture of satisfaction and regret. How long until the critical cascades begin? Based on current progression and their ineffective countermeasures, Sharma replied, approximately 36 hours until systemic collapse becomes inevitable. Thorne turned to Petrova. We could still halt the protocol at this stage. There would be damage, but the lifeline could recover. Petrova was silent for a long moment, watching the increasingly desperate council members on the screen. They still think they can fix this without us. They still don't understand what we've done or why. She shook her head. Proceed to Phase 2. 30 hours later, the lifeline began to collapse in earnest. The first major grid failure occurred in the Orion sector, where a power distribution hub controlling energy flow to 17 populated worlds suddenly initiated a complete shutdown. Backup systems activated automatically, but found themselves unable to authenticate with adjacent distribution nodes. Within hours, planetary power grids began to fail. Hospitals switched to emergency generators. Atmosphere processors on terraformed worlds faltered. Orbital habitats initiated emergency conservation protocols as their power reserves dwindled. Communication networks degraded next. Quantum entanglement relays, the backbone of instantaneous galactic communication, began reporting synchronization errors. Messages arrived corrupted, duplicated, or not at all. Coordination between systems became increasingly difficult, hampering rescue and repair efforts. Defense systems were affected last and most dramatically. Automated security platforms began to identify friendly vessels as potential threats. Some weapons platforms went offline entirely, while others locked into diagnostic modes that rendered them useless. The carefully integrated defensive shield that had protected Confederacy space for centuries became a patchwork of functional and non-functional sectors. In the Signan capital, riots erupted as food distribution systems failed. On the Vrel homeworld, atmospheric regulation systems in the underground cities began to malfunction, forcing emergency evacuations to the hostile surface. Across 100 worlds, the technological infrastructure that billions of beings had come to rely upon was unraveling with terrifying speed. An emergency war council of the Confederacy's military and technological leadership convened aboard the command vessel Imperative, the most advanced warship in the galaxy. It was one of the few Confederacy vessels built entirely with Signan and Vrel technology with minimal Earth input. "We have no choice but to implement a physical override," declared Admiral Zorth of the Vrel Defense Force. "We must send teams to manually reset the core lifeline nodes and bypass the corrupted control systems. Most of those nodes are now reporting complete lockdowns," objected a Signan engineer. "The physical security systems aren't responding to override commands. Then we'll breach them by force," the Admiral replied grimly. "The alternative is to watch the Confederacy disintegrate. I've assembled a task force of our most advanced vessels and elite troops. We'll target the primary lifeline hub in the Cygnus sector first. It controls nearly a quarter of the network." The desperate plan was approved unanimously. Within hours, a fleet of 73 warships converged on the massive Cygnus hub, a sprawling space station 50 kilometers across that housed the physical infrastructure controlling lifeline operations across multiple sectors. As the fleet approached, they encountered no resistance. The station's defensive systems remained dormant. Docking bays opened without challenge. It seemed almost too easy. Admiral Zorth led the assault team personally, marching through the eerily empty corridors of the station toward the central control nexus. The absence of Earth personnel was conspicuous. Maintenance robots stood immobile. Diagnostic systems displayed incomprehensible error messages, but no human technicians hurried about as they had for decades. When they reached the sealed doors of the central control room, the Admiral deployed specialized breaching equipment. The massive doors, designed to withstand even the most determined attack, yielded surprisingly easily. Inside, the vast chamber hummed with the operation of countless systems. Holographic displays showed the status of thousands of lifeline nodes, many now flashing red with critical alerts. At the center stood the primary control core, a towering column of advanced technology that housed the master control systems of the lifeline network. "Begin the override sequence," Zorth ordered. "Priority Alpha, bypass all security protocols and initiate system-wide reset." The Signan engineers rushed forward, connecting their equipment to the core's access ports. For several minutes, they worked feverishly, their crystalline appendages moving with practiced precision across the interfaces. Then one by one, they stopped, their postures conveying confusion and growing alarm. "What's happening?" demanded the Admiral. "The system is empty," the lead engineer replied, his voice hollow with disbelief. "All operational logs, all control directories related to Earth's management systems, they're simply gone. Deleted. That's impossible. Restore from backups. There are no backups. The backup systems themselves have been wiped. It's as if Earth never existed in the system at all." As the implications of this sank in, a new horror revealed itself. The control core, which had continued to hum with apparent activity, began to emit a high-pitched whine. Warning indicators flashed across its surface. "Get back!" shouted the engineer. "It's initiating some kind of—" The core didn't explode. Instead, every light, every display, every indicator on its surface went dark simultaneously. The humming ceased. The holographic displays vanished. The entire chamber fell into darkness before emergency lighting activated. When power was restored to the chamber's systems, the engineers discovered the true nature of Earth's final move. The control core hadn't been destroyed, it had been permanently deactivated. Every circuit pathway had been fused at the molecular level. Every data crystal had been systematically wiped and then physically altered to prevent reuse. The core stood as it always had, but it was now nothing more than an elaborate sculpture, a technological corpse that could never be revived. As the stunned assault team grappled with this discovery, every communication device in the chamber simultaneously activated. A simple message played, repeating in a calm, synthesized voice that belonged to no recognizable species. "The tool you discarded has been removed from the box. Plans have changed." The message repeated 3 times before fading to silence, leaving only the sound of the Admiral's agitated breathing. Similar scenarios played out at lifeline hubs across the galaxy over the following days. Each assault team found the same conditions: systems that appeared operational until approached, control cores that self-neutralized when access was attempted, and the same cryptic message playing as a final epitaph. Earth hadn't destroyed the lifeline. They had simply removed themselves from it, completely, irreversibly, and with surgical precision. Like master architects who knew exactly which stones to remove to cause a ceiling to collapse, they had extracted their contribution from the galactic infrastructure without demolishing it. They had left it standing, but fundamentally broken, beyond the Confederacy's ability to repair. 2 months after Earth's withdrawal, the Galactic Confederacy was in full collapse. The technologically advanced core worlds maintained some semblance of their former function through desperate innovation and resource rationing. The outer colonies, long dependent on the lifeline for survival in hostile environments, faced humanitarian crises of unprecedented scale. The once unified Confederacy fractured along species lines as ancient rivalries and suspicions resurfaced. The Signans blamed the Vrel for inadequate security oversight. The Vrel accused the Signans of technological arrogance. Smaller species formed protective alliances or withdrew into isolation. Project Containment, the classified initiative that had sparked Earth's drastic response, became public knowledge, further undermining trust in the species that had led the Confederacy for centuries. The revelation that the powerful core species had secretly planned to permanently subjugate Earth once its usefulness ended sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Many saw Earth's action not as sabotage, but as justified self-defense against planned oppression. In the Himalayan Command Center, now expanded into a comprehensive planetary defense and monitoring headquarters, Ambassador Petrova stood with General Thorne and Director Sharma, watching real-time intelligence feeds from across the galaxy. The Orion Colonial Cluster has declared independence from the Confederacy, Sharma reported. That's the 7th major secession this month. The Rigelian fleet attempted to seize control of the Tau Ceti energy reserves yesterday, Thorne added. They were repelled, but this marks the 3rd direct military confrontation between former Confederacy members. Petrova nodded, her expression solemn. And what of Earth status? Our stealth observation platforms report no serious attempts to reach Sol system in the past 3 weeks, Sharma replied. Our advanced cloaking technology appears to have been completely effective. As far as the galaxy is concerned, Earth has simply vanished. And yet we see everything, Petrova murmured, gazing at the displays showing the unfolding galactic crisis. We've become the ghosts of the galaxy. The 3 leaders stood in silence for a moment, each contemplating the magnitude of what they had done. Earth had freed itself from potential subjugation, but at what cost to the wider galactic community? Was there truly no other way? Petrova asked finally, giving voice to the question that had haunted her since implementing the severance protocol. We explored 17 different diplomatic and partial disengagement scenarios, Sharma reminded her. All projections indicated the Confederacy would have used conventional or covert military action to retain control of our lifeline contributions. A clean, complete severance was the only option that ensured Earth's independence. We didn't start this, Thorne added firmly. They planned to use us and then contain us. We simply refused to be their tools. Petrova nodded slowly. And yet I wonder if we've become something worse in our quest to avoid being victims. We've watched billions suffer the consequences of our actions. The Confederacy's collapse isn't solely our doing, Sharma pointed out. We removed our contribution. We didn't sabotage theirs. The speed and completeness of their disintegration reveals how fundamentally they depended on us while planning our eventual subjugation. The contradiction was unsustainable. What happens now? Petrova asked, turning from the displays. We've secured our independence, but at what cost? We've isolated ourselves completely from a galaxy in chaos. Thorne gestured to another section of the command center, where engineers worked on advanced propulsion systems and weapons technologies that had been developed in secret for decades. We continue to advance. We strengthen our defenses. And perhaps, when the galaxy has rebuilt and learned its lesson, we consider selective re-engagement on our terms. And if they come looking for retribution instead of partnership? Sharma asked. Then they'll find we're no longer the junior partners they once knew. Thorne replied grimly. Silence fell over the three leaders as they contemplated Earth's isolated but secure position. They had ensured humanity's independence and safety, but at the cost of becoming the specter that haunted a fractured galaxy's nightmares. The species that had demonstrated the power to bring an interstellar civilization to its knees without firing a single shot. In the depths of space, far from the heart of the former Confederacy, a lone scout vessel drifted near an abandoned lifeline relay station. Its systems were failing, life support operating on minimal power as the crew awaited either rescue or the end. On its damaged communication array, a faint signal, still repeated at regular intervals. The final message from the species that had vanished from the galaxy. The tool you discarded has been removed from the box. Plans have changed. The Confederacy's plans for Earth had indeed ended. But Earth's plans for the galaxy, and for itself, remained unknown, a disquieting question that haunted the survivors of a collapsed civilization. The line had been cut, and in the echoing silence that followed, the galaxy faced a future without its once indispensable architects. A future in which Earth watched from the shadows, unknown, unseen, but never again to be underestimated.